Welcome back. Today we're going to look at the Domino 500. But first, here's a jingle. The Domino 500 is basically a jointing system. It'll cut a mortise of a variety of sizes into wood. And into that mortise you put a floating tenon known as a domino. You use it pretty much anywhere where you would use a mortise and tenon joint. The advantages are it's accurate, it's repeatable, and it's incredibly quick. So if you're doing a lot of carpentry work or furniture work that requires mortise and tenons, this could be the tool for you. Out of the box we get some literature. We get a colourful leaflet that gives you some of the features and some of the joints, as well as showing you some of the errors that can be made with the Domino. You get a safety leaflet and you get the instruction book, usual thing, pull out diagram, multilingual. You also get the standard Festool guarantee, 1 year out the box. If you register it, 3 years including the theft warranty. You get the cable for plugging the thing in. You get the Domino itself, which comes pre-installed with a 5mm cutter. You get an additional support bracket for stabilising the Domino when you're using it in certain situations. And you get a spanner, an 8mm spanner that's used for changing the bits. You don't get any dominoes and you don't get any spare cutters. Let's look at the features of the Domino. This is a 230 volt Domino 500. It also comes in the UK in a 110 volt version and different voltages for different regions around the world. It will cut a variety of dominoes, 4mm, 5mm, 6mm, 8mm and 10mm, and as I say, it comes fitted standard with the 5mm cutters. It will cut to a depth of 12mm, 15mm, 20mm, 25mm and 28mm. It has a standard 27mm dust extraction port on there. It will not take the 36mm extraction hose. It will cut at a variety of angles for you, from 90 degrees all the way through to 0, and it's got a number of stops in there to make things a little bit easier. The position of the cut in the material can be varied in relationship to the reference fence, and that will adjust from 5mm in its lowest position all the way up to 40mm in its highest position. It has a number of ready-made stops inside here for setting the height quickly, and they range from 16mm all the way through to 40mm at stops of 16, 20, 22, 25, 28, 36 and 40. It comes equipped with a sight gauge here, a clear sight gauge that shows you the centre of the cut, and there's also some marks on the base that also show you the centre of the cut. It also has increments at 10 and 20mm, and again the 20mm one is repeated on the base. In use it's a bit noisy. It comes in at 95 decibels, so hearing protection is advised, and it runs at an overall speed of 25,300 revs per minute. There are two main parts of the Domino, and releasing this catch here separates the two parts. You simply insert the spanner underneath that and it comes apart. This is the head assembly. This is the main body, and in here you can clearly see the 5mm cutter. Now the way that the Domino works is this revolves and cuts just like you'd expect a normal drill to revolve and cut, but this piece here moves from side to side, and that creates elongated slots that take the shape of the Domino. To change the bits you simply push the locking lever here on the side and use the spanner, and that releases the bit. It just simply unscrews, and there you have it. You can buy a number of optional bits as an accessory, and they come in 4mm, 6mm, 8mm and 10mm variety, and they are designed to match the standard Festool Dominoes. If you buy the kit like this, you also come with a spare 5mm cutter. To replace the bit, you simply screw it back onto the threads, screw that down loosely till it stops. You then push in your locking lever and using your spanner just nip that up so it's just snug. You don't need to go too tight on that at all, just simply snug it up. You can then reassemble this. You can see here the domino is going to slide up and down on these two cylinders, and this one's longer, and that's just to make it easier to line up. You slot it into one, slot it into the second, push it home, and that's the machine assembled again, ready for use. This green knob here varies how much of that side to side movement you're going to get. If it's on the smaller setting here, it's going to cut the exact size for the domino. If you put it on this setting here, the hole is going to be slightly wider than the domino. This setting here, the hole is slightly wider again than the domino. And that gives you some adjustment when you're lining dominoes up in your final cut. The final adjustment is this lever here that goes from 12 to 15 to 20 to 25 to 28 increments. And what you can do is you select this green knob here to 28. This will now do a depth cut of 28 millimeters. Releasing the black knob, I can set the same depth for 25, for 20, for 15 and 12. And all that is doing is setting how deep this will cut. The most cost-effective way to buy the domino is to also buy the accessory kit. In the accessory kit you get a range of dominoes, and remember there's no dominoes actually come with the domino, so it's pretty useless. With the kit you get the additional bits. You get a selection of 4mm by 20mm dominoes. You get a selection of 5mm by 30mm dominoes. You get a number of 6mm by 40mm dominoes. You get some 8mm by 40mm dominoes. You get some 8mm by 50mm dominoes, and you get some 10mm by 50mm dominoes. You also get the sustainer case to store the dominoes in, and these handy little containers inside the case to keep everything organised. So I highly recommend that you don't, when you buy the domino, you also go ahead and you buy the additional domino accessory kit. So the purpose of the domino is to join material together, and we can do that in a variety of ways. We can do panel to panel joinery. We can also do right angled joinery, and we can use it to put shelves in to a panel. We can also do it for angled cuts, anywhere from 0 up to 90 degrees by using the adjustments on the Domino Festool. So you have a lot of options here in your joinery. We'll just demonstrate a few for simplicity as part of this review. So the first joint we'll look at is joining these two panels together. These panels are 18mm. And a good rule of thumb when you're using any mortise and tenon is to actually make the tenon a third of the material. So 18 divided by 3 is 6mm. So we're going to use a 6mm domino, and that means that the domino is 6mm thick. So therefore I want to use the 6mm bit inside my domino. So job one, to put the right bit in. Take out the 5, put that on one side, and drop in the 6. The second thing I want to do to set the depth of my plate from the centre of my cutter to halfway down the board. 18 divided by 2 is 9mm. So I loosen off the scale, and here I'm just looking to set this to 9mm. There's no quick stop for 9mm. So we will adjust this by eye. There's a calibrated scale on the side in millimeters, and we'll just set that to 9, which is there, and we'll lock that down. Now these dominoes are 6 by 40mm, so I want to set my depth of cut to 20mm, so that'll be 20mm in each of the boards. 20 plus 20 equals 40. And that's my domino set up. Now there's two ways that we can lay out our dominoes. The first way is we can use these little black spring-loaded stops and reference against the edge of the board. So if my two boards I'm joining together are exactly the same width that these are, then that's a good way of doing it. I could reference from this one for my first domino, reference from this edge for my second domino. The other way I can do it, the way that most people do it, is to put some arbitrary lines. So I'll line that up against a flat stop and I'll say I want a domino there, and I want a domino there, and I'll have a domino there. Now that means that I can now come in and I can reference that line on that center point there of my domino. Now when you're doing this, you want to make sure that this surface is flat on the board and you're not being held off by this resting on your MFT. So to avoid that, it makes sense to overhang the board slightly off the MFT table. It makes sense to clamp the board and secure your workpiece, so come in with whatever your preferred clamping strategy is and clamp that down. And now that's nice and secure, you can come through and you can make your cuts on the domino. Safety gear as always. So we can now repeat that on the second board. Remember, I said that this green knob here can change the cut. What I mean by that will lengthen this mortise inside the board itself, so allows for any inaccuracy in our domino. We'll make our first cut in the centre on the standard cut, and then we'll set it to this one here for these two outsides, and that will allow us to see the difference in the cut. Only ever adjust this with the motor running. It's basically a gearbox inside here, and if you turn it like this you can actually damage it. So turn it on, adjust, adjust. So we'll do the first cuts on the standard size, and the outside cuts we'll do on this second size. Now hopefully you can see the difference in the cuts. This is a standard size cut, this is the one on the first setting, slightly elongated. So we can now put our dominoes into these slots. And then you can bring your boards together, like so. And it's that simple, and that now gives you a joined board. Now remember, I hadn't jointed this edge, so you're not going to get a perfect finish, but that is flush across that board. So the final thing I want to show you is this black foot here. On the base of the domino there are two holes, threaded holes, and these threaded screws here simply line up and slot into those holes. So if my shelf wants to be somewhere around about there, and that's the line I want to put my dominoes against, can you see this edge here and this edge here? That lines up perfectly with the centre of the cutter. So I line those two holes up to that scribe line, my marking line, there, and then that will plunge down perfectly into that position. And similarly, there's an indent on the black foot here, that is the centre of the cutter in this direction. So if I know I wanted one of my holes there, one there, and one there, and I know that because I'd line my shelf up, I come along, I line that one up to the centre, I line the edge up to the line, and now I can cut my dominoes where they need to be. That's pretty much it, the Domino 500. It's a joining system that allows you to use floating tenons in pretty much any situation where you would use a traditional mortise and tenon. As I say, it's quick, it's repeatable, and it's accurate. The complaint that most people tend to have about the Domino is around the price. And yes, when you first purchased it, it's quite a heavy investment. But it depends what sort of woodworking you want to do. If you're doing production, i.e. manufacturing furniture, which is what I'm going to do, to cut a domino probably takes me about 2 to 3 minutes. Once it's set up, I can batch those out pretty quickly and I can get through a lot of dominoes in a day. When I'm cutting them by hand, yes, I can probably still do a mortise and tenon in about 10 to 15 minutes. It's accurate and it's tidy and it's tight and it's clean. But this is so much faster. And over a period of time, probably in about 2 or 3 furniture pieces, it's probably paid for itself because I've speeded up my production. So they're the sort of things that you need to think about. It's well made, lasts a lifetime, it's got the 3-year guarantee with it, it's got the 3-year theft with it. What more do you need to say? Thanks for watching, hope you found it useful. I'll see you next time.